Hello, welcome to Marie's Scrappy Creations, where we sew the scraps of your life into beautiful creations. Today I have an autumn project, but it doesn't need to be an autumn project, as you will see. You could make this for any time of year with any kind of fabric. It doesn't have to be seasonal or holiday related, but who doesn't like something like that? This is what we're going to make today. Isn't this adorable? Cute little autumn tote bag. Now, your straps can be made in any length that you prefer. I'm going to show you what I like. You change it up for you. This has a magnetic clasp. Again, this is optional. You do whatever you want. We have a pocket inside, and the pocket has two sides. Okay, so what I use with my pocket, because I have my own autumn bag, in one side I put my phone, and in the other side I set my keys and my hand sanitizer, whatever. So you have room for both of those, and the length of the pocket will make it so that your phone sticks up. Mine sticks up about 1/2 inch, so you can grab it without having to, dig down inside the pocket. So this doesn't have to be made with squares. You could make it with strips. You could make it with yardage. You could make it however you want. But I went with autumn themed because I just think it's gorgeous. Perfect for this time of year. You can change around anything about this tote that you want. You can change the length of the strap, the width of the strap. You could change up the size of the tote bag itself. You don't have to put a pocket. You could put more pockets. You could put pockets on both sides. Choices are up to you. So without further ado, let's go get this going. And remember, if you don't need the detailed instruction like I have in this video, if you're not a beginner or you don't need it, just skip ahead to what you need. You do not need to watch the whole video. And I'm going to link another tote bag tutorial showing everything step by step. And that will play at the end of the video, as well as will be linked in the description below. All your measurements, everything you need, they're all going to be listed below. Let's go do this. All right, let's take a look at what we need. So the first thing I'm going to say is I have already made a tote bag tutorial, which I will link at the end of this video. When you get to the end, it's going to come up on the screen. I will also link it in the description box below so that you can find it. I'm not going to go over every single part of this because it would just be repeating. So this is what I made for this tote bag. I made 2 9 patches, and these are made from 5-inch squares that I received from Kimberly. Now, Kimberly has an Etsy shop, which I will link down below. And if you were with me last month, she sent me 2 charm packs full of autumn beauty. Now, I laid them all out and put, each thing together, each fabric together so that I could see what I had. So unfortunately, I can't tell you which autumn pack these came from. I'm going to leave the link down below that will show each of the charm packs that I had. And so if you're interested in those, you can go find those. Like I said, I'll leave the link. If you want to dig into your scrap pile and use what you have, you go for it, because I'm sure we all have scraps as well. All right, so I sewed these using a 1/4 inch seam allowance, and then I used a serpentine stitch and went keeping the seam in the middle, and then I also went in the middle quilting. I'm going to flip this over so that you can see. Okay. So this is exactly what I did for quilting on this. Now you can do whatever you want to do. On my bag that I made for myself, here, I'll grab that and show you. Okay, so this is the tote bag that I had made for myself. And what I did is I simply used a serpentine stitch directly with this in the center, and that was it. I used one layer of cotton batting behind it, similar to this. I'm going to give you guys all kinds of choices here. So one layer of cotton batting, which I used some, what do we call it here, spray-based. And there's all kinds of spray-based brands out there, or you can use pins, clips, whatever you want to use. So I have two, as I said. So the one that I showed you first, this one, is made with some Pellon fusible. So it's Pellon 987, I believe, but it will be listed in the description box below. So it depends on what you want for your bag. Do you want it more structured and stable? Then you want a fusible fleece. If you want it softer, then you want cotton batting. You could also have a firmer bag with using 2 layers of cotton batting, or maybe you have a lightweight interfacing like some sheer weight or SF101 that you could put in there and some batting. The choice is up to you, as well as the quilting. So on my bag, when I made it, I didn't want a lot of quilting. I just wasn't in the mood that day to do it. So I just simply used my serpentine stitch. I didn't get any fancier than that. I have a bag, a tote bag that I have used for about 5 years now, and it is stitched 1/8 of an inch from each side. In fact, let me grab that to show you. Okay. Now this was made with different size squares, and as you can see, I had a base fabric at the bottom. I had buttons. This is actually from a shirt of mine from when I was a teenager. I've had the buttons for many, many years, decided to use them there. Anyway, this was quilted 1/8 of an inch from each side. You could also get that look simply by using a twin needle. The choice is up to you. Okay, we're going to skip ahead to everything that's needed. Okay, so you want your 2 9 patches, your strips, your yardage, whatever you're going to use for your 2 front pieces of your tote bag. You don't even have to use the same size, but we're going to pretend that you're using 18. So you're going to need, for this, to do it my way, you're going to need 18 5-inch squares. Your fusible fleece or cotton batting. You're going to need fabric for your straps. And I don't know if you noticed or not, but my straps were scrappy. Of course they were scrappy. All right. And I had done that as well on my other tote bag, and I love the look of it. This one has 4 different fabrics, and I just did them each way. You can see the wear on this. This is, like I said, about 6 years old, and it has held up very well to almost everyday use because I don't change my purses out for the season until this year when I made myself that beautiful autumn purse. So I cut 4 pieces that I had, just fabrics laying around, and I cut them at 4 inches wide by varying lengths. And I'm going to piece those together, which I'll show you in a moment. But so you're going to need either yardage that will match your bag or scraps. You're going to need scraps of cotton batting or a fusible fleece, and we're going to cut this just under 1 inch. I would cut it at about 3/4 of an inch wide because this is going inside of our straps so that it gives some substance to it. Your lining. You're going to need 2 pieces of fabric for your lining. Because you're quilting When you quilt this, it's going to change your size, and then you're going to have to square this up. I would tell you to cut, you're going to need at least a 14-inch square, but I would say cut it at 15 to begin with, and you can take any extra off from there. But make sure you have two 15-inch squares. All right, now for the pocket. Going to show you what this one looks like. All right, now I'm using my phone to film this, so I can't show you how well a phone fits in here. But I made one pocket and then sewed it in the center to divide it. So in one side, I keep my pen, my list, my hand sanitizer, my EpiPen, whatever. And in the other side, I keep my pocket. So for this pocket piece, you are going to need a piece of fabric measuring 10 inches by 14 inches. And this is the one I'm going to use because this being the inside, I figured, number one, it really doesn't matter. It's a pocket, but that keeps with my autumn theme. All right. Now, this is helpful, but not necessary. And this is a water erasable marker. I'll leave the link down below. I need to order some as well. Okay, I'm going to use the clasp for a closure, but I wanted to show you that this bag that I've been using all these years does not have any type of closure. Now, I have not had a problem with that, but with this bag, I decided to put in the magnetic closure because number one, it makes it look more finished, but number two, it keeps everything from falling out if your bag falls over, okay? So I thought everything fit in there well. The top of the pocket, I didn't have any problem sewing. This was out of the way, okay? So this is optional, but I will list a link down below if you would like, excuse me, to try the clasp. And if you do that, you're going to need two small pieces. Now this is fusible fleece Pellon 987. You just need something to go on your lining. And what it does is it keeps it, because this could wear out and come through the fabric because cotton is not very thick. So we're going to use this to help stabilize those clasps on the fabric. All right, but that is optional. The pocket is actually optional as well and will be listed below as optional because you don't have to. Another thing that I used and I find helpful in this project is magic sizing. If you spray your straps before you piece them, you'll find that they're easier to work with, or at least that's the way I find it. Okay, so we're going to get started. As soon as you have your front all quilted, your straps cut, your pocket cut, I'm going on right now, I'm going on to the straps and the pocket. So let's go start that. Okay, so for the straps, you want a total length of 34 inches. So I have two darks and two lighters, and I just noticed that these are both pumpkin and these are both leaves. I don't think that matters, but I'm going to switch it up a little bit. And it doesn't matter, you know, you could put 4 or 5 pieces along here. You could do anything you want. I'm going to stick with 2. Now they won't be even, like on this one, let's say, these came together at the top. These aren't going to do that, but I'm not worried about that because I like scrappy projects, so that does not bother me. All right, if it bothers you, just make sure it's even. So let's get started. if you're piecing your straps, this is the way we're going to do it. Right side up, right side down, lay it right across there. I usually take just a little bit of an overlap, and I mean by like 1/8 of an inch. And there's also about 1/8 of an inch there. Draw a line diagonally from one corner to the other, and this is your sewing line. Pin or clip this into place. In just a moment, when I'm done this, I'm going to take it to the machine. I'm going to sew that with a 2.0 millimeter stitch length. And you're going to back tack at the beginning and the end. And again, right side up, right side down. Leave just a tiny little bit, probably more like 1/16 of an inch, to be honest with you. Draw your diagonal, excuse me, diagonal line. Some people eyeball it. I can't, because if I was a little bit off, I would have to take my stitches out. Okay, let's take this over to the sewing machine, or I'm going to take it to the sewing machine, and I'm going to sew those two. But since I'm going over to the machine, I'm also going to take care of the pocket. All right, so we're going to take the longer edge of the pocket and fold that in half. Just directly in half. Okay. And pin or clip. In the side, it doesn't matter which side, and if you prefer to do this at the bottom, you could do this at the bottom. I'm going to leave an opening, and it does not need to be very wide because we're just flipping this right side out. So while I'm at the machine, I'm going to use a 1/4 inch seam allowance, and I'm going to go around, and I'm not going to sew here. I'll go back and sew here. I'll meet you right back here. All right, now let's get this going. And of course, as you know, you don't have to make an autumn tote bag. You can make whatever you want it to be. I'm going to cut about 1/4 of an inch or more, doesn't matter, away from my sew line. And save my triangles, even though they're my least favorite scrap to save. I am not a fan of triangles. I do use them in my crumb blocks. Okay. Going to trim our corners. And flip this right side out and meet me at the ironing board. Right, everything's flipped right side out and we are at the ironing board. And we're going to make this nice and flat, straight. Perfection. That's how we want our pocket. Now, actually, no one's going to see this. So if it is slightly off center or you don't get something just right, don't worry about it, because it's going to be inside your bag. No one will know. And if you wanted to, you could have used the sizing on this pocket piece as well, because when you flip it right side out, it's more apt to keep this edge nice and straight when you use sizing or starch in some way. Okay, I'm going to put a pin there to remind me of where my opening is. Okay, now what I do to reinforce my pockets is I fold this piece down. Now, if you want to measure it, you certainly could. I don't, actually. I fold it down about 1/2 inch. Give it a good steam press, as you can see. So before I take and put this in the bag to prep it, I'm going to take it over to the sewing machine and I'm going to stitch that down. And I use a fairly big stitch, like a 3.0, and I'm going to back tack, sew across here, and back tack. But for now, I'm going to set that piece aside because when we go to the sewing machine, we'll have more than one thing to do. So right now, we need to take care of our straps. I saw this on the fabric. Isn't that odd? There's nothing wrong with the front that I can tell. But I saw that it's kind of like a mistake or a flaw in the fabric where the dye ran or something. I noticed it. And you can press your seams to one side. You can press them open. You do whatever you're more comfortable doing. I always press mine open. And as far as strength goes, before someone says it won't be as strong as it could be, that purse I just showed you is going on 6 years old, and I carry everything but the kitchen sink in it, and it has not come undone at the seams for having had pressed it open. So I know that it will make a stronger seam if it's pressed to one side. I still feel that for this purpose, it's really not going to matter. Okay, so we want 34 inches. So I want you to cut your pieces. If you want a longer strap too, you certainly could. As you can see, my pieces are not the same length, but I'm going to make sure that I have 34 inches at least because that's the strap size I like. But you do whatever you want to do. I'm going to measure and cut, and I'll meet you back here. All right, I have my 2 pieces. I did end up centering this, although it is not necessary, and especially if you're using 3 or 4 pieces, don't even worry about that sort of thing. All right, our next step is going to involve the iron. We're going to fold this in half, pressing a crease. Just like this. I'm going to give it a little bit of steam. Just remember, if you have steam, don't go rubbing back and forth like this. You'll stretch your fabric and you won't be happy with your results. So if you're using steam in an area like this, just press it. Do not iron. Okay, now we're going to open it up, and you guessed it, we are going to put it towards the center. Now I want to make clear, do not go all the way to that crease. You want to go just before it, okay? Because if you go and you meet that, it's got more likelihood of making a wrinkle, for one. But number 2, not everything will fit in there as nicely as it will if you just give it a little bit of wiggle room. So again, I'm just inching the iron along here, letting the heat do the work. And you could also do this. You could finger press before you get the iron up there. So what it does is it kind of holds it in place where you're going to want it to be. See, isn't that nice? So we're going to hold it like that. Flip side, we're going to do the same thing, pressing it towards the center. Now I'm going to do this, I'm going to finish this piece. I'm going to do the same thing with the other strap, and I won't bore you with all that. So I'm going to pause the camera and you'll see me again in a moment. Okay, I am at the end of my second strap, and I wanted to just mention a few things here. All right, when you fold these, because you're going to fold this together, just kind of make sure that your edges are even, okay? And then you're going to press that as well. And again, no rubbing back and forth with your iron. This is not a dress shirt. You just need to press. Let the steam and the heat do all your work. My glasses are fogging up. I got right over the steam. All right, set the iron aside, and then we're going to put the batting inside these. Now I'm only going to work with one, because once you've seen me do this one time, I'm sure you can do it. In fact, you probably already know what I'm going to do. We're going to open up our strap, and maybe you have long pieces. I'm just using the short pieces that I had left over from something else. So you're going to place your cotton batting here inside your strap. Just end to end. And of course, I'm just a little bit short. And cut a piece. Okay. Now, we're going to make sure it's straight when we fold it up. Okay. I have a little crease right there I'm going to fix, actually. Okay. To tuck that in there. I'm going to, see, I'm trying to put this edge against the crease, okay? You don't want it to overlap the crease, but you want it right in there. Just butt it right up against the crease. And then fold this over and fold this back. Pin or clip. See how that is? Right against there. So this is what you're going to do to both straps. All right, I have pinned my pieces. I have everything ready to sew. Now, I'm going to go over to the sewing machine, and again, I'm going to back tack, top stitch, back tack. With the straps, I'm going to sew close to this edge, about 1/8 of an inch. And I'm going to go all the way down one side, come back up the other. Then I am going to either straight stitch, you can do whichever you want, or you can do a fancy stitch up the center, your choice. So you do that, meet me back here, and we're going to start assembling our tote bag. Okay, so these are stitched, and I sewed down through the center with a serpentine stitch. Let me see if you can see that. I'm not sure. There we go. So both edges and the center. And make sure, double check, triple check, that your straps are exactly the same length. Mine are just slightly off. Okay. While I was over there, I also top stitched my pocket, and that is ready. All right, so after you quilted your squares, what I did after I quilted mine was I squared them off. And whatever measurement you end up with, which mine was like 13 3/4. But whatever your measurement is, you cut 2 lining pieces that measure that. Okay? Then we're going to fold this in half, make a crease. Actually, I'll probably just press it. It will be easier that way. Makes a little mark. And you can also do this just to pin it. So there's our center. Place the pocket. We're going to come down 2.5 inches from the top. So I'm going to fold this in half to find my center. Now I have a crease. You may not be able to see it, but I can. So I'm going to center this pocket on that crease 2.5 inches down from the top. So I'm going to just set this here at 2.5 inches. Now I have my crease. I'm going to place that just like that, top and bottom. A few pins in it to hold it. Okay, now take it to the sewing machine and sew. You back tack, sew down, across, up, and back tack, and meet me right back here. And we're going to put the clasp in if you are using a clasp. So here we go. And my pocket is sewn on, and now I want to know where the middle is because we're going to sew down the middle. So I'm going to mark that. And again, I'm using a water erasable marker. You can use chalk or whatever you're comfortable with using. This. And I have a mark going right here. I'm going to back tack a couple of times, the same thing here, and stitch that. Okay, so if you are using the clasp, you're going to want to pay attention to this next part. So again, we're going to make sure that we have our center. Okay, I'm going to do that on both pieces of your lining. And you only need it at the top because that's where this is going. Now I'm going to measure. I'm going to flip this over. I have my crease. I'm going to measure down 1.25 inches. I'm going to put this, whatever is your glue side, put your glue side down. Actually, I gotta move this up. Sorry. You want about 1 inch there. Heat that iron up. Okay. So like I said, about 1 inch down. Center this. And because I don't have a press cloth, I'm going to use this. I just give it a little bit of steam, hold it for a couple of seconds until that. You could also flip it the other way around. Okay, there's one. Now make sure that your pockets are, the open part is up. You have your center. And again, we're going to come down 1 inch. Center this. And press it in place. And these just measure about 1.5 inches, whatever you have laying around. As long as it's bigger than the clasp, you're good to go. And this one ended up going level with the pocket, so. But as you can see, mine aren't even square. They're just whatever they are. They're going to work. Don't have to be picky. I had to get out my tools. I have an X-Acto knife. You could also use a seam ripper. There's a few different ways you can do this, but I'm going to show you how I do this. Okay, I'm going to come down into the middle of this. All right, so 1 3/4 inches down from the top, make a mark. And then you still have your center. If you can't see it, go like this again. Fold it and mark that. So now you have a T. Now there's only 2 pieces to these, and they're very simple to do. Nothing scary, just 2 pieces. This goes on top of this. And it doesn't matter which side, whether you use the male or the female piece, okay? So what you're going to do is, whoops, take one of these circles, and I want you to center the circle that's in the middle directly over your T that's right there in the center. And I'm going to make marks. Like that. Can you see that? I have 2 marks there. Now I'm going to take my X-Acto knife and I am going to carefully, because it's very sharp, I'm going to cut that. Whoops, I guess I ought to tighten that up. Goodness. You want to make sure you go all the way through. That's why I'm doing it on my cutting mat. You're going to, oops, that's coming unglued. I guess I better press that a little bit more. I didn't hold the heat to it very long because I was showing you guys, and I should have given it more heat. You're going to poke these prongs out through your holes that you just made. And as you can see, it can be fiddly to try to find them, especially on a dark fabric, such as what I am working with. I'm going to make my holes a little larger. Just be careful, you do not want to cut yourself. Some of this fleece can be very thick, and when you think you're all the way through to the other side, sometimes you are not, and I was not on at least one of those, but I am now. And I'm throwing parts of this all around. See if I can push that through there. I can see it. Okay, I got one side. I had to shut the camera off just because I was getting nervous it wasn't going through. Okay, there, I've got it now. You take your prong and you place it here. Now, I have seen other people use glue, such as E6000 and this Gorilla Glue. And it should stay down all on its own, but because it might, I'm going to give it just a little dab just in case, so it can't move around. Place the prongs, place that through the prongs, and then push them to the sides, just like that. That's all there is to it. So if you use glue, you're going to want to let that glue dry before you do any more sewing. So in the meantime, we're going to do the same thing that we just did on the other side. Okay, I had to find my hardware. It fell on the floor there when we were doing that last piece. So again, 1 3/4 inches down from the top, make a line, fold it in half, and you do want to be precise, because if you are not precise, then your magnets will not fit together to hold your purse closed or your tote bag. So you do want them to line up. So you need to make sure you take a little bit of time with that. And center that. Make your mark. And this time, I know one thing, I need a new blade because this is dull. And you know, my dad was a chef and he used to say, you can cut yourself quicker on a dull knife than with a sharp one. And I think that that is true of most anything along this line. All right. I'm going to put my prong through. I can actually see it because some of the batting came out through the other side. Well, this one went in easy. Now see, that just goes to show that not all of them are like the first one I had. Cap that X-Acto knife. I don't want an accident. All right. And I'm just putting a little dab of glue, just like last time, nothing serious. And I have other bags that this is not done on, and they're fine. So if you don't have the glue, it's fine. I'm using it as extra protection. There. Fold it down. Now I have glue on my finger because I'm just so excited to show you guys. So there's our clasp. All right, so we're going to let this dry, only you're not going to see it. Through the magic of my pause button, we're going to dry this, and then we're going to go to the next part of our tutorial because we're so close to done. All right. So we're going to take our liner and put right sides together, and you can close that clasp if you want to. Pin or clip. Just match up your corners and your sides and pin or clip going around because you want everything to be where it should. And we're going to leave an opening in our lining so that we can turn our bag right side up. Right side up. How about right side out? Okay. And I usually do this along the side. But you don't want to get too close to the bottom because we're going to be cutting a square out of there because we're going to box our corners. So I want you to come up at least 3.5 inches or so from that edge, from your corner. Now this is the side because this is the top, okay? And then you're going to leave a 4 or 5 inch opening there. Let me see what I have. 3. I've got about 5 inches there. Okay. And we'll set that aside and our straps will go to the side. Now, if you have a directional print, you want to be mindful of that, which I do on both of mine. Right sides facing. And I will say match your corners, but if you're working with squares, of course, you could have done this with all scraps, so it wouldn't matter. But if you're working with anything that needs to be matched up, make sure you're matching it up where the seams meet. Or you might not be happy when you're done. Ask me how I know that. Sometimes the machine just pushes your fabric along and, you know, you're just sewing right along there and before you know it, bam, nothing's lined up. And if you're like me, that just can't happen, so you have to take all your stitches out. Okay. One more to meet. Peek and make sure, yeah. Okay, this is the bottom. Okay, we're ready to sew again. And again, I'm not going to show you simply because I know you know what I'm doing. I am going to sew with a 1/4 inch seam allowance in a U shape. I'm going to back tack, sew around, back tack. On my lining, I'm going to back tack, sew along here until I get to here. And I'm going to back tack. Then I'm going to leave this open. Back tack, sew, and back tack. I use a smaller stitch length on my lining because I'm going to be cutting from here. So I usually use a 1.8 millimeter stitch length there. And I use a 2 millimeter stitch length here, 2.0, because I want a nice tight stitch because, you know, people put weighty things in these. Okay, let's go stitch those and you meet me back here. All right, all sewn around. Take all my pins out. I love making tote bags. Like, I don't know what it is about them, but I really, really, really like them. Okay, so we can mark for our, I have to get the right ruler here, our squares. Okay, and this is totally up to you as far as your preference on how boxed you want your corners. Now, if you used a 1/4 inch seam allowance like I did, what I'm going to use, I'm going to go 1.5 inches from the outside, okay? Oops, I guess I ought to make it even, huh? So you're doing this to your two bottom corners. This is your opening. These are your two bottom corners. Mark them with a square. And you can use any kind of pen because you're cutting this off and then you're sewing over it, so it's not going to show. I used to worry about that sort of stuff early on. Not anymore. There's so much more in the world to worry about than this. Okay, now next we want to see where our straps are going. So I'm going to turn my bag right side out. This is just how I like to do it. And we're not going to worry about our corners down here at all because we're going to be cutting them off. I'm just flipping it out, just getting it kind of straightened up a little bit. So I'm lining this off. Iron. Now I have a 6-inch ruler here. My square, oops, I guess if I measured it correctly, is 4.5 inches. Okay. Now I want 6 inches between my straps like this. Okay. So you need to find your center, and you could do that. There's so many different ways. This is probably the easiest way for me to show you to find your center, is to match your seams right here and make sure you're matching the correct way. You know, you don't want your seams offset. You definitely want that center. Okay. Now this is a 6-inch ruler, so I'm going to place my 3-inch mark right on that mark, which will give me 3/4 of an inch. I know you can't see it, but 3/4 of an inch on each side of that block. So I'm going to place one of my straps right here, and I always put them up about 1/8 of an inch past the edge, just barely. And I like to use 2 pins because I feel you can lay it straighter. I think lays better. Now make sure that this is not looped. You want it to be exactly where it should be. You don't want this folded in any way. And again, you're going to use 2 pins. I'm going to flip. Do the same thing on the other side. So I don't really need this because I know that it's 3/4 of an inch to the side. And I'm going to place here. And one on the other side, but I have to do this first or I will mess it up. Okay, and again, make sure your strap is not twisted in any way. And before I sew, I always check by holding it up like this. I'm going to flatten this. See how these meet right here? I'm going to do the same thing from the other side. I'm going to pinch that seam. I'm going to check. All right. Take that pin out of there. Okay, I grabbed a couple of safety pins. I like to keep the strap out of the way. Yeah, the extra strap out of the way. Boy, that's thick. Right. I guess that little one isn't going to do it. I better find another larger one for the other side. And this just kind of keeps them so that you don't have to wrangle with them inside your liner. Okay, now I want you to take it over to the sewing machine and I want you to baste. And by baste, I want you to do a long stitch and I want you to go very, very close to this edge, like 1/8 of an inch away. I want you to sew your straps down. Okay, I've stitched. This is what it should look like. Just like that. Now, let's flip this right back the way it was. And we're going to deal with our corners. And I'm not going to get into detail here again because it is in my other tutorial, which will be linked at the bottom in the description box, as well as at the end of the video. You will be able to click on it and play it from there, or you can look up under my channel, you can look up Scrappy Tote Bag. I'm going to just give you generalized instructions on what I'm about to do. You're going to match your seams like this. Pin or clip. And you're going to do this to all 4 of your corners and sew them with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Okay, I think I trimmed all my threads. So my corners are boxed. Now decide one of these. We'll, let's turn this right side out. And I like to poke my corners. Yeah, I'm going to have to do it again when I pull it back out again. But anyway. All right, so we're going to slip this inside the liner. So the liner is inside out. Your bag is right side out and it's going inside the lining. And I left my pin cushion somewhere. Okay. So I start with my sides. You're going to match your corners or your edges, whatever you want to call them, your side seams. I always do those first. And it will be a little bit of a tight fit because you're fitting something bulky like your outer piece inside your lining. So, you know, if you have to move it around, shuffle it around a little bit and push it and tell it where it needs to go, then that's what you need to do. All right, so otherwise you're just going to line up the top fabrics so that everything is even. Just like this. So close to done. And I think I'm going to make myself a Christmas purse because normally I just use the same tote bag, which is what I use for a purse, and I use it year round. And it's the other one that I showed you earlier, the longer one. And there's nothing wrong with that, but I think I should have a different one. Okay, now we're going to go over to the sewing machine, and you could sew 1/4 inch seam allowance. You can do 3/8. You do whichever you want to do, but I usually use a 2.0 stitch length going around. Okay, so you're going to go completely around and make sure you overlap some of your stitches, and don't forget to back tack. Okay, I have sewn all the way around. I did mean to mention that you should, when you get to your straps, you should go back and forth a couple of times. I always reinforce it. I go forward, back, and then forward over each one. I just think it reinforces them, helps hold them on there. Okay, now I don't want you to completely turn it out yet. I want you to do this. And anyone who has been around for a while, you know what I'm about to do. Those of you who are new may not have seen this technique. When I first started making bags, it drove me crazy that if I reached down inside, the lining would come out. Now, I've gotten around that a few different ways. One of which was I used to put a button down at the bottom of the bag to help hold it in there. And that looks fine and it works, but it's not necessary. Okay? You're going to take this flat edge, follow your seam, take your other flat edge, bring it just like this. I'm sorry that it folded. Let me see. Straighten that out and I'll show you again. Take your flat edge, follow your seam, bring that up to meet it. And you're going to place a pin. Because you're going to go over to the sewing machine and you're going to go right here, back and forth a few times, 3 or 4 times on this side of your seam, not over here. You want it right here. So I'll draw a line just in case there's any new people so you can see exactly where I'm talking about sewing. Is right in that area, right here. All right, so come around to the second side, and this can be a little fiddly, so pay attention to what you're doing. I don't mean it like pay attention to what I'm doing. Pay attention to what you're doing and follow that line. Grab your other piece. Just tuck that out of the way. Hold that right on there. And put a pin. And stitch. Okay, these are stitched right there. Right, back and forth. All right, now we're going to flip it right side out. Now, when you've sewn these like this, turning it right side out can be trickier to find because it's inside here a little bit. Okay, so just work it slowly out through your opening. I just have to find where my pocket is and then go the other side of it. And just slowly push that out. And flip that around. Of course, the handles sometimes get in the way there, but just show it who's boss. There. I'm going to unpin those handles here, those straps, in just a minute, because now that you get it flipped right side out, they're kind of in the way when you have the safety pins there. But to me, they're easier that way to get the bag put together. I'm going to put my hand inside the opening and poke out my corners on both sides. Remove these. And I think I like this bag better than I liked my first bag that I made for myself. And I don't know what I'm going to do with these bags. I might sell them. I'm not sure. I say bags because I have another one right behind it that I cut out just so I could show you guys the cotton batting versus the other. All right. So it doesn't matter in which order you do the next two things, but you need to put this between your fingers. I'm going to trim that thread. I always get a thread caught in there. It never fails. All right, you're going to roll this in between, okay? And I like to pin it in place. You know me, guys. I love my pins. Because the next thing is top stitching. And you could press it. You hear my iron beeping at me. You could press it, and I've been known to, but when it lays pretty flat like that, it's really not necessary. There are times, if your fabric isn't laying how you want it to, definitely iron it. Press it, I guess I should say, but just make sure that your inner and your outer are staying to their own side and that they're where you want them to be. Let's roll that. And then I'm going to top stitch it and close that opening inside, and we're going to be done. Okay, I am almost around here, and then I am going over to the sewing machine. I'm going to use my universal foot, which is, I'll show you here, this one. You could use a walking foot if you want to, if you prefer. I'm going to use this, and I am going to set this bag underneath there. I'm going to set the edge underneath there, and then I'll take a look and I'll say, where do I want my line to be, my sewing line? And I'll line up wherever I want that to be. So you do whatever you think is going to look right for you, because this is your bag. So let's go top stitch that. Okay, look at that. Top stitching is all done. Maybe you could see it from the inside easier. I used a 3.5 millimeter stitch length, which I think made it look very neat and very nice. So the only thing left to do, heat up my iron. All right, my iron is hot. I have my point press that my son made for me, and I use that on this part, since we have this opening that we need to close. Okay. And usually you don't put the whole point press in the bag, but that's what's working for me this time. So that's what I am going to do. I'm going to fold this under 1/4 of an inch and I'm going to press it. And boy, I tell you, this thing, this piece of wood makes it so slick. And I'm going to come around here and I'm going to fold this under 1/4 of an inch. Give it a little finger press. Like that. And again, I took my pin cushion off because I keep doing that, don't I? I always pin where I need to start and stop. I go just past that. And I don't know about you, but I used to hand sew these because I thought that was just the neatest way you could go, which it is. I still stand by that. But I'll tell you, if you put a zipper foot on, you can get pretty darn close to that edge and save yourself the hassle of not having to hand sew. Not that I mind, because I do like to hand sew, but I'm just giving you guys more opportunity. All right, I'm going to stitch this and we'll be done. Okay, that is sewn. Flip it right side out, and you guys know what this is. And because I haven't given you the creative word of the day today, that's going to be October, because it's October now. Now, I love tote bags, as I've said before. And to me, this is a good size. My other bag, the one I have carried for years, is another one longer. It's just too big for most times. This, to me, is perfect. It ends up being 13 inches by, well, let's count that flat, 13 by 12. So it's 12 inches this way, 13 inches this way. I think it's an adorable bag. And again, the squares came from Kimberly, who has a shop on Etsy called My Fabric Addiction 1. She sent me these squares. She sent me 2 autumn charm packs, and because I mixed them all up, I really honestly can't tell you guys which ones came from which pack. I think they're like $13 per charm pack, something like that. I'll leave the link below. Of course, you can always use your scraps, and you can always make one that is not autumn related. It could be autumn themed. It could be just your everyday colors or what have you. Well, I had fun doing this with you guys today, and I hope you had fun hanging out with me here in my sewing room. So until next time, I want you to dig into that scrap pile and get creative. It's so fun to let our creative juices flow. And if you give this a try, I'd love to see it on our Facebook group. I would love to see a picture of your scrappy creation. So until next time, be kind out there. The world needs more of that. And I'll see you next time right here at Marie's Scrappy Creations. Bye-bye.